I first saw the leopard when I was crossing the small stream at the bottom of the hill. The ravine was so deep that for most of the day it remained in shadow. This encouraged many birds and animals to emerge from cover during the hours of daylight. Few people ever passed that way. As a result, the ravine had become a little haven of wildlife, one of the few natural sanctuaries left near Missouri.
Below my cottage was a forest of oak and maple and Himalayan rhododendron. A narrow path twisted its way down through the trees over an open ridge where red sorrel grew wild, and then down steeply through a tangle of wild raspberries, creeping vines, and the slender ringle bamboo. At the bottom of the hill, the path led on to a grassy verge, surrounded by wild dog roses. The stream ran close by the verge, tumbling over smooth pebbles, over rocks worn yellow with age, on its way to the plains and to the Little Song River, and finally to the sacred Ganga.
It was early April and the wild roses were flowering. There were still yellow and blue primroses on the hill slopes, saxifrage growing in the rocks, and an occasional late-flowering rhododendron providing a splash of crimson against the dark green of the hill. I walked down to the stream almost every day after 2 or 3 hours of writing. I had lived in the cities far too long and had returned to the hills to renew myself, to get rid of some of the surplus flesh that had gathered about my waist, and to write a novel.
Nearly every morning and sometimes during the day, I heard the cry of the barking deer, and in the evening, walking through the forest, I disturbed parties of Khalij pheasant. The birds went gliding down the ravine on open, motionless wings. I saw pine martens and a handsome red fox. I recognized the footprints of a bear. As I had not come to take anything from the jungle, the birds and animals soon grew accustomed to my face, or possibly they recognized my footsteps. After some time, my approach did not disturb them. A spotted forktail, which at first used to fly away, now remained perched on a boulder in the middle of the stream while I got across it. The forktail's plumage blended with the rocks and running water, so that the bird was difficult to spot at a distance, but the white cross of St. Andrew across its back eventually gave it away, its sharp, creaky call following me up the hillside.
The langurs in the oak and rhododendron trees, who would at first go leaping through the branches at my approach, now watched me with curiosity as they munched the tender green shoots of oak. The young ones scuffled and wrestled like boys, while their parents groomed each other's coats, stretching themselves out on the sunlit hillside. But one evening, as I passed, I heard them chattering in the trees, and I was not the cause of their excitement.
As I crossed the stream and began climbing the hill, the grunting and chattering increased, as though the langurs were trying to warn me of some hidden danger. A shower of pebbles came rattling down the steep hillside, and I looked up to see a sinewy orange-gold leopard poised on a rock about 20 feet above me.
It was not looking towards me, but had its head thrust attentively forward in the direction of the ravine. It must have sensed my presence though, because it slowly turned its head to look down at me. It seemed a little puzzled at my presence there when, to give myself courage, I clapped my hands sharply. The leopard sprang away into the thickets, making no sound as it melted into the shadows. I had disturbed the animal in its quest for food, but a little later I heard the cry of the barking deer as it fled through the forest. The hunt was still on. The leopard, like other members of the cat family, is nearing extinction in India, and I was surprised to find one so close to Missouri. Probably deforestation had driven the deer into this green valley. The leopard naturally had followed. It was some weeks before I saw the leopard again, although I was often made aware of its presence. A dry, rasping cough sometimes gave it away. At times I felt almost certain I was being followed. In May and June, when the hills were brown and dry, it was always cool and green near the stream. The hill station's summer visitors had not discovered this haven. I was beginning to feel that the place belonged to me. That dominion was mine.
The stream had at least one other regular visitor, the spotted forktail. And though it did not fly away at my approach, it became restless if I stayed too long. And then it would move from boulder to boulder, uttering a long, complaining cry.
I spent an afternoon trying to discover the bird's nest, which I was certain contained her young, because I had seen the parent bird carrying grubs in her bill. The problem was, when the bird flew upstream, I had difficulty in following her rapidly enough as the rocks were sharp and slippery. Slowly making my way upstream, decorated in bracken fronds, I hid myself in the hollow stump of a tree at a spot where the forktail often disappeared. I had no wish to rob the bird of its young. I was simply curious to see its home.
By crouching down, I was able to command a view of a small stretch of the stream and the sides of the ravine. But I had done little to deceive the forktail, who continued to object strongly to my presence so near her home. I summoned up my reserves of patience and sat perfectly still for about 10 minutes. When the forktail quieted down, out of sight, out of mind. But where had she gone? Probably into the walls of the ravine, where I felt sure she was guarding her nest. So I decided on trying to take her by surprise and jumped up like a jack-in-the-box in time to see not the forktail on her doorstep, but the leopard bounding away with the grunt of surprise. 2 urgent springs and it had crossed the stream and plunged into the forest.
Needless to say, I was as astonished as the leopard and forgot all about the forktail and her nest. Had the leopard been following me again? I decided against this possibility. Only man-eaters follow humans. And so, as far as I knew, there had never been a man-eater in the vicinity of Missouri.
During the monsoon, the stream became a rushing torrent, and the friendly murmur of the water became a threatening boom. I did not visit too often, but it was always worthwhile tramping through the forest to feast my eyes on the foliage that sprang up in profusion. I walked home through the silent forest. It was very silent, almost as though the birds and animals knew that their trust had been violated.